Hola Karen, friends and foes, and welcome to the first out of 13 faction previews for the mod DCI Last Alliance. I am Ngugi, project and team leader behind this mod, and shall guide you through the presentation of the faction of Rhûn Confederacy, or simply Rhûn for shorts. Now, Rhûn is not the name of a state or kingdom, nor the name of a nation. It is instead the Sindarin word for east or the east. And reflecting this background, we have given the name Rhûn Confederacy because we are talking about a part of the world, and we can see the western fringe of the east on our gameplay map. You can see here on the eastern edge of the map we have what is called Rhûn. However, this is just the westmost part of the area in Middle Earth that is referred to as the East. Likewise, the Easterlings are not one group of people, but instead are a lot of different peoples who are living all across the East. So in order to reflect this, we have used the name Rhûn Confederacy. Confederacy is also a word that Tolkien himself used later on in the Third Age, when different groups of Easterlings joined together to fight against Gondor at that time. At our point in history, we are of course in the end of the Second Age, and I can give you a short summary of the background to the Easterlings at this point in time. As all other men, they had awoken in the far east and migrated westward. Some of them even came all the way to Beleriand, where they fought either with Morgoth the Dark Lord or with the elves against Morgoth. The majority remained, however, further east, and at the dawn of the Second Age they were found some in the north of Middle-earth, but mostly in the east, thus the name Easterlings also. During the Second Age, Sauron arose as the new Dark Lord, and since Morgoth had a great influence in the east still, and because there were no elves to oppose Sauron, nor did there came any Númenóreans to any significant degree, Sauron could take dominion over the peoples in east and south with little opposition. Those who didn't like him, they fled to the wastelands and the wilderness, but the majority fell under his control. However, it was not all bad, in a sense. They gained a lot of knowledge, they learned to build walls and cities and make tools out of iron, so they were growing in technological prosperity. However, when you have a lord such as Sauron, who is a demagogue and is portraying himself as a god, you will not belong to a very humane and positive society, you have many bad influences, such speaking. And Sauron encouraged hatred and conflict among his subjects, and especially, of course, hatred for his enemies. So the Easterlings, for centuries, if not millennia, have learned to hate many of the peoples in the West, expecting them to be the actual evil, an evil enemy fighting against their god, since Sauron is portraying himself to be a god, using flames and whatever. After all, he's a Maiar, so he has some powers to give the impression that he is a deity. Now, at this point, we have reached, as you can see here, the year 3429 of the Second Age. Sauron has just begun a war against the remnants of the faithful Númenóreans, who have survived the destruction of Númenor and have created the two kingdoms of Gondor and Anor. Sauron has started his war against them, and he is now reaching out to the east, mustering his forces. So what we will encounter and experience here is the gathering of many different peoples, tribes, kingdoms, chieftains, warlords, who are heeding the call of their supreme lord, their so-called god, to help defeat his enemies. As for Rhûn's strengths, they have a great diversity of custom quality units, and we will have quite a lot of focus on this thing, because they lack in heavy standard units, or perhaps common units is another word. So we have custom and standard units, or as we would call them, tribal and common units. But we shall dive into this. Welcome to Middle-earth. This is the welcome scroll when you are playing one of the so-called evil factions in DCI Last Alliance, where you get a short summary of what has been going on for the last centuries or during the age, and that we are now in a situation where Sauron's dominion has started war against the nations found in the West. It contains also at the end a reference that we have designed DCI Last Alliance to be played on very hard, and we will encourage you to play on those settings. However, as it should be said, you will not be penalized in any way if you play on a easier difficulty level. Indeed, it is so that DCI is created to be a very hard game. Such speaking, this is not a game made for your little brother. We want this game to be a serious challenge, so that even if you are a very experienced player, you will have a hard time. You will have a fun time. I can take, for example, we had one of our beta players who had not played past turn 100 for at least many years in any Third Age or Third Age submod game, any campaign that he had played. But with DCI Last Alliance, he got past that easily, still having fun, still having a challenge, still enjoying the game. So it makes us very proud to know that the effort that the team has put into making DCI a hard game will come off, and most importantly, it is a hard game without relying on stack spam, because stack spam is a scourge of Total War games, in our opinion. Now, the second note is the faction information scroll, and I will come back to the faction information scroll in about every video, because the faction information scroll contains information both about DCI, Lost Alliance in general, but also faction specific features that are very good to know to enjoy a complete DCI experience. There may be features concerning the faction you are playing that you might miss if you do not check the information scroll. But it is Shift F1. We will not go into it today, I think. No, we won't. But you will see it later on in the future. Let's move on. This is something you will see in every campaign we start. We are given some initial options to activate or deactivate features, and I will show them quickly. Either we can accept both instantly, or we can press decline, and if we press decline we are given the options to accept or decline them individually. For most factions we are playing, there will only be these two options. For some factions there are more. The first one is Shadow and Fire. As you perhaps can see, this concerns the Balrog of Moria. Do you want him in the game? You accept. If you do not want him, you decline. Thing is, the Balrog of Moria was not awoken until the Third Age. But we have opened up for the possibility that you could see either the dwarves or also the orcs of the Misty Mountains dig deep and greedily, and thus awaking the Balrog. I usually would not activate this myself, except perhaps if I am playing as the dwarves, actually, because it is a fun, tense risk where you continue to build mines and suddenly you are evoked from your own capital because there's a fire demon kicking you out. But we decline this here, and here is the Immortal Nazgul, a feature that many know from other submods. Our setup is that you can not kill them forever. They will respawn, however, a couple of times. So over time you will fight them or fight alongside them, or commanding them, of course, if you're playing Mordor, but they will not respawn forever. The reason for that is, of course, that this is an age, a point in time where we have many elven heroes and enchanted weapons, etc., who are capable of destroying Nazgul. So sooner or later, if they are in battles, they would presumably they would not only be beaten, at some point they would be destroyed as well. But now for this purpose we simply decline. And welcome, now we see a little bit more of the map. Of course the position is along the eastern border of the game map itself. This makes Rhûn, a relatively easy faction to play, even if we of course are doing our uttermost to make every faction a challenge. The fact is that Rhûn has their back safe, and having your back safe always makes it a bit easier, because you won't have as many fronts to be concerned with. Every starting region is a desert region, and you will be able to know this not only from the map itself, but also from the info books, or the so-called atlases. In 3rd Age, all the atlases had the same color. In DCI Last Alliance, we have tried to make this more visual, so that every different terrain type, mountains, forest, grassland and desert, has its own color. Meaning, as you can see here, if we select the large town of Rhûn, the book, the atlas book, is sand colored or beige, or what you would call it, and so you can instantly see when selecting a settlement what color do the book has, and that way knowing what terrain is it in the region. Also, if you open it up, you find that the frame of the info picture, you will also see the book of course, and the terrain will be desert. Kudos to Bitnavar from the team who created and updated this aspect of the game. It makes things a little bit smoother, especially in regions that seems to be perhaps both grassland and desert. Then you can mark the settlement and quickly see it for yourself. Now we shall have a look at each starting settlement on its own. One difference you will find when you are checking the lower settlement, the furthermost settlement of Kand, is that you cannot build a mine. Many players are accustomed to that most of Rhûn will provide you mines, or at least many settlements in Rhûn will provide you mines. This is no longer the case. There is one settlement that we will reach further north that has a mine, but not any longer canned. It, however, do have the slave resource, meaning it is possible for them to build a slave market. It generates some income, but also it will create some conversion to the so-called others culture, or it is unspecified culture, representing that if you bring in a lot of slaves, you will get in a lot of people from different backgrounds. As you can see here, there are mostly followers of Sauron, but it's also a significant amount of others. Then of course, if you're tossing an eye, there are some few dwarven traders perceived, and also a few Northmen who are out on travels and such. However, the most perhaps significant difference from 3rd Age you can see here in the building icon of the Kand homeland. The starting regions of Rhûn are divided into 3 so-called homeland areas, where Kand are consisting of the 2 southmost regions, and this will have a significant important that we will look into in a short while. We also straight east of Mordor we have the minor city of Gardar, which is also a Khand homeland. This is the largest of the starting settlements as you will have, so it will be good for making money fair and square. A bit north here we have Mataram. Mataram is a town and it is one of the Balkoth homelands. Together with Mataram is Mistrand. This is a border capital because Mistrand is the capital of Rhûn, the faction, and is on the very edge of the realm, if this, or the Confederacy territory. Just as Mataram, it's of course also Balkoth. And lastly we have Aini, a so-called stronghold, meaning a wooden castle. It is a Higher Rhûn homeland together with the large town of Romen. So these two homelands of Higher Rhûn. Now I shall comment on that the town with the mines capacity is Mistrand, the capital. It is the only mine in the starting regions of Rhûn, so it is quite handy to ensure a good income. Likewise, it can of course construct a port, as with Third Age, but not as every submod to it. The Sea of Rhûn is you can build ports and you can trade on it. However, you cannot build ships here, so you can't send armies across to Gardar. Since it is a desert region, we can build caravans, a caravan stop, and they increase in trade, so they are very good for income, and they are far supreme to the markets. Now what do I mean with that? I can show you here an easy comparison. Here we have a grain exchange already. Let's say that we would build the second level market, and right now we have 147 income from trade. If we will build a market, we will earn 159. So it's a very small bonus in trade. Mind you, we also get a bonus in income from it, but still it's a small one, and the trade bonus was, as you noticed, not great. However, if we, instead of building a market, so we are back at 147 and we choose to build a caravan stop instead, then we will go from 147 to 298. A significant difference. And this is because the markets are giving an increase in tradable goods, meaning that the things that you have in your region, you get more of those, while the caravan stops have increase in trade, meaning that the amount of products sold are increased. So you get a far greater bonus from the caravan stops than you do from the markets, and these will be cash cows if you get them up in many regions. Very, very useful. Not only that, however, if we are having a look at the caravans here, the first level, the caravan stop, increase trade, but the trading post also give a population growth bonus. and it increases with the larger the caravan building you have, the greater the population growth bonus. This is equal to, say, for example, many the Numenorians can build chicken farms and sheep farms and cow farms to boost population growth. The Easterlings can't get as much population growth bonuses from their caravans, but they can get it, and they can have it in deserts where other humans can't construct a population growth building of this kind. Of course, you can always upgrade farms and everything, the normal kinds of buildings, but this is an advantage of the Easterlings, that they can construct the caravans. It begins with the homelands, but as you will find, it will continue into the conquests of Middle-earth, and we shall go through them one by one. First, as we brought up earlier, we have the canned homelands. Now, you can take Garda here for example, because it's a large one. We can currently recruit generic, the common soldiers of Rhûn, who can be trained in any settlement at all. Normal spearmen, normal upgraded or next tier spearmen, and if we build a barrack, we can see how we can tribesmen, basic spearmen, better spearmen, and swordsmen. However, as we can see here, we have an option to recruit the canned infantry. And the canned infantry is, just to make an easy comparison, the runic spearmen have attack 4, total defense 11, and a bit against cavalry. The canned infantry come with 6 attack, 18 total defense, with 10 armor. Can make shield wall and have armor piercing. These are tanks in the canned army, and you can get them from scratch. You do not have to build any building in the homelands, because here you have the homeland building, the marker of that this is canned, and in canned you can get the infantry that belongs to this region, this so-called tribe. This is of course very handy, and it allows you to muster quality troops quite early in the game. However, it is these two canned regions who have it. If we move northward, and if we reach the Balkoth homeland, the possible recruitable units are not the same. Instead, we find that, oh yeah, okay, we have here a common spearman, common archer, but we also have the Balkoth tribesmen, javelin men, who are only possible to recruit in the 2 Balkoth areas, not in Kant, or as we will find further north in Haerun. Also, because of the concept of Balkoth, and I will go through the concepts of each of these so-called tribes later on, Balkoth do not only have 1 unit, they have 2 units, so they have a cavalry unit as well. And lastly, in the north we have then Haerun, and Haerun do provide a axeman, double 200 axeman unit. Now, these units will be, there will be more of them after we pass the barrack event. So once you get past the barrack event, there will be more so-called tribe units like Haerun Axemen. There will also be there's a unit called Haerun Lancers, a heavy cavalry unit, and that unit will be made available after the barrack event by default from this Haerun homeland, in the homelands, such speaking, and meaning that in each starting area of that tribe you will have recruitment options not available in the other area. Now, short about the concepts for these so-called tribes. Khand we refer to as a region of city-states. They are devoted to heavy infantry, meaning that their first unit is the Khand infantry, those heavy mace-wielding infantry with large shield. And once we pass the barrack event, they also have very heavy archers in full armor and with masks. As some of you may know, the Balcots were an Easterling group in the Third Age who attacked Rovanion and settled and took land and fought against Gondor. Balcot, however, is not their own name for themselves. It was a name given by the Gondorians and is in Sindarin, or at least Sindarin slang, such speaking, meaning like something like terrible yell or something like that, and really is a term that you can compare to barbarian. So they are calling them simply, oh, it's the barbarians, those who make noises who we can't understand. It's quite unsettling. So we have perceived that this is a word, Balcot is a word that the peoples in the West could use for Easterlings or the enemies who are living in a certain manner. And the Balcots of DCI, who might not be the same or even related to the Balcots in the Third Age, are having the same kind of situation and cultural manners to their namesakes in the Third Age, meaning that the Balcots are the most rural and least advanced of the three Easterling tribes that we present. They are the farmers, and their reasoning to expand west, to attack and conquer, is not really to gain wealth or perhaps as much honor and such, but rather to get land, to settle, and they want to get new land to live in. This do mean that they are, being the peasant tribe, such speaking, of the three tribes, their advantage lies in numerical superiority. They have three tribal units, in difference to only two for Khand and Haerun. That is of course an advantage in itself, but they also have some other bonuses that we will come to later on when we are discussing how to expand with the Rhûn Confederacy. And lastly, of course, we have Haerun, and Haerun is Sindarin for Far East or the Far East. We want with this tribe to represent the fact that many of those Easterlings who comes to fight do not belong to the western edge of Rhûn. They are coming from the Far East, way further back in a part of the map that we cannot see. And we have chosen the two northern regions to represent this because that would be closest to the eastern lands. Assuming the world is round, but at least since the fall of Numenor the world is round, so that would be closest on a globe. And Rhûn is as a tribe devoted to, of course they have strong units, but also they are devoted to trade, which will be seen as we move on again to the expansion of Rhûn and some strategic options that you will gain. We can point also here to the fact that here we have Uldor, the heir of the faction. He has a special ancillary that he's the chief of the Rhûn, meaning he's the foremost of the kings and chieftains from the Far East, giving him an authority boost but also a movement range boost, because he is marching. He belongs to those Eastlings who have marched furthest to get to the battle. While Kamiru is the chief of the Balkoth, the foremost among the chieftains of the pastoral Balkoth peoples, and he gets a bonus in command when attacking, since of course they are interested in expanding and taking land. While then the chief of Kand, who is the foremost among the Kandish lords, get a plus command when commanding infantry, because that is a specialty of the Kand tribe. They have no cavalry unit, they have only foot soldiers. So I shall now jump ahead a bit to show you a scenario in a campaign where we have taken a lot of land and where I can point you to the really appealing aspect of playing the Rhûn Confederacy. And of course it's always fun to kick enemy ass as a glorious Easterling commander. Let me see here. So, but it would be quite boring if we could only get the tribe unit in the homeland regions. So now we will come to the fact that you can dedicate a settlement to a specific tribe. Before I do that, I shall just quickly, because I saw now that we have gone past the barrack event, of course, meaning that in the two Rhûn settlements we have the axemen as before, but now also the Rhûn lancers available to us. While in the Balkoth regions we do not only have the Balkoth tribesmen and the Balkoth lancers as before, but now we also get the Balkoth Sikas, who are carrying forks like cutting weapons and are quite badass. And finally, down south in Kand, we do not only have the Kand infantry, but also the Kand marksmen available to us. So the homeland regions becomes even more fun after the barrack event. So let's have a look. I have saved these settlements so I could show you what I am talking about when I mean that we can dedicate a settlement to a specific tribe. Let's pretend that we have just taken Kamboska, the previous rebel settlement, and now in this settlement we have the option to construct a Rhûn outpost. The Rhûn outpost is quite cheap, take 1 turn to build, and it gives us a public approval bonus of 5%. Public approval bonus approval grant you public order. It is not quite as good as a law bonus, because law both give public order and it decreases corruption, or what is known as corruption. In DCI we call it something else, but we'll get to that. Law gives reduced corruption, meaning that high law is good for income. Approval, on the other hand, gives you public order, but it do not affect anything else. And we want to represent the fact that people are like, okay, you're here, you're the boss, I won't oppose you, but I won't help you out either. I won't be happy to pay my taxes, but I won't mess around. I won't stand in your way. People approve. It's okay. We do as you want. That's cool. So then you can build a Rhûn outpost, and the building merely represents the fact that, well, now the new rulers are putting up their tents, or they are occupying the mayor's old residence or something like that. They're making the mark, we're here and we're here to stay. However, once you have constructed the outpost, you will have some further options, and I move along here to Uldonovan, who is pre-prepared. It's like a food program where they have the cake already done to pick up from the oven. Here we already have the Rhûn outpost constructed, but we have now the option to build the chieftain's camp, and we can choose either Haerun or the Balkoth or the Khand chieftain's camp. Now every tribe, as I described previously, have a special focus. Haerun are devoted to trade. Balkoth are the farmers who want to expand and take new land to settle in, while Khand, and I did not mention this quite clearly, but they are the city-states, and they are city-states, of course. Presumably each city-state has their tyrants who are devoted to keeping public order and maintaining control and control over their own city, just as much as keeping hostile city-states away from their territory. So we can find here in the Rhûn tribe camps building tree a lot of options, and I shall go through them one by one and discuss the advantages and disadvantages with giving a region, a settlement, to a specific tribe, because you can only choose one. So if I decide here that, oh, I want to build the Balkoth chieftain's camp, I cannot build neither Haerun or Khand. Or if I build Khand, I cannot build any of the others. So you have to make a strategic decision. Which tribe do I want to give this settlement to, who shall have the authority and influence over this specific settlement. And there are some factors that play in on which should you choose. So we can begin with, on the bottom here. We have the Balkoth Chieftain's Camp, and what this gives us, it maintained the public approval bonus of 5%. So now we do not lose that from the outpost, we keep that, but we get the Balkoth tribesmen, and the Balkoth tribesmen are, as shortly referred to earlier, they are light javelin men, but they are quite numerous, so they are useful if you want to maintain a high level of units in your army. You will always be thankful for having more units available at need, of course. However, if you then go from the Chieftain's Camp and upgrade it in the next level of to the next level, you, beside keeping the approval bonus, you also get a population growth bonus, because now the Balkoth tribes are starting to move in and settle in the region. And this is a unique feature. It is highly useful, of course, if you want to help a settlement grow. You can build this in any climate, so even in mountains, and even in, well, especially mountains, in areas where it is not your climate. Easterlings prefer deserts and grasslands, so building this in, and as we said, it was only caravans who could offer extra population growth from buildings, but they could only be built in deserts. If you build Balkoth Chieftain's Residence, you can get a population growth bonus in any settlement. Also, of course, you also get the Lancers, the cavalry unit, that is better than the standard Rhûn cavalry unit. So you will also get both, then suddenly you have 2 units available. Quite handy. And lastly, when you move along from the Chieftain's Residence to the Chieftain's Court, you get a full 1% population growth bonus, and you also get the Balkoth Sikas, who are the blokes with the Folks-like weapon. And this aspect of Balkoth, all in all, makes them, they are very useful to choose for a settlement that you want to boost in size. So while their units are in general not on par with the heavy and deadly units of Haerun and Kand, you will get more units. So if you like to pump armies, Balkoth will be a better choice for you than going with Kand or Haerun. Now, instead, if you do not want to go with Kand, you want to test some of the other, we have, if you don't want to go with Balkoth, you can go with Kand. The first level of the Chieftain's Camp of Kand do not have the public approval bonus, but instead gives you a public order bonus due to law, so you get a law bonus. And you might remember that I told you that law is better than approval, because law also reduces corruption. So you will get more more public order, and a little better income by choosing the Khand chieftain's camp. The disadvantage, of course, is that you do not get a unit from the first level of the Khand camps. While Balkot got the Balkot tribesmen, the javelin men, you do not get any unit from the Khand chieftain's camp. It's first when you upgrade it to a chieftain's residence that you get the heavy Khand infantry, and when you build the highest level, the chieftain's court, you get a public order law bonus of 15%, but then you also get the canned marksmen, the archers. And I know from beta testers, beta players, that they really love to choose canned to get these heavy units at their possession. In general, I would say that if you have a smaller settlement, you presumably will prefer to construct Balkot camps rather than canned, because it will allow you to get that settlement to a higher level sooner. However, if you capture a larger settlement, canned is a good choice, both because you get more law, but also because in a large settlement you sooner can construct the court and get the not only heavy infantry but also the heavy archers, and they are appreciated. Lastly, we have the Rhûn chieftain's camp, and they increase in tradable goods just like a market, so they give a bonus to income. That bonus will differ from different regions. So Rhûn is a good choice for a settlement that is rich in trade, and you can bolster this even further. But it is also very useful for frontier settlements, such speaking, because consider Ravanost as a frontier settlement. We have the Sylvan Elves of Erungalen right to the west, and they will presumably become our enemies soon. An advantage with the Rhûn chieftain's camp is that you get the Rhûn axemen instantly, and the axemen are nasty too. They are great warriors. You will appreciate to get them quickly. They are not as heavily armored as the canned infantry, but they also have armor piercing and can do a lot of damage. So they are most useful in what I would call frontier settlements, where you can then get two-handed axemen quickly into the battle, so they don't have to march as far. Perhaps you have the front far from the homelands of Rhûn. A difference between Rhûn and the other tribes is that it has only 2 levels. So you go directly from the chieftain's camp down to the chieftain's court, where you will get even more tradable goods, but then you will also get the Rhûn Lancers, the heavy cavalry unit, available. This also makes it, just as with canned, it is, except for the frontier argument and except for the trade argument, you can also take into consideration that Rhûn is a good choice in larger settlements that you capture, because then you can get the Lancers available sooner, because it will be such a jump between, you don't have them the second stage, you jump from the first to the third directly, so building it in a and a middle-sized settlement might not give you as much payback. A positive thing about the larger levels of these camps and these courts is that even if you do not oh yeah, we mentioned it, that the court is so grand that delegations from Khand and Balkot hold permanent embassy quarters in it. So some of their units can replenish their numbers here. I think the only unit that cannot replenish itself in courts of other tribes are the javelin men, because they are so petty that they would not be allowed into the embassy really. But Balkot Lancers and Balkot Sikas could replenish their numbers in a court of another tribe. And that is so that you do not have to see units wither away completely, but you can retrain them. You can't recruit new ones. You can't recruit canned units from a Balkoth court, but you can retrain your canned units in a Balkoth court. Now, we shall begin to look at the units and models, and I know many have been waiting for this, so I hope that you shall enjoy. I shall only begin with commenting on that the strat map models of the armies, these are still third age models, so do not be confused. These are indeed the third age map models, and they will be replaced as we move on prior to release. We shall begin to have a look at some, and this is the case of course also for Rovanion and all other factions, but
yes,
we shall begin to check out some general models, because that's easiest to do directly from the campaign
swiftly
map.
or slowly, I care not. Just kill them.
And I can note that all the load screen quotes have been sorted, so they are focused on either mainly the second age, some the first age, and in case of third age quote, only those that has some generic is of some generic interest, by which I mean they are informing us about feature and content in the world that we otherwise might miss, but that is as applicable to the second age as it was to the first or then third age. Right, let's begin. Here we have, well, now you see for the first time in live action the handiwork of Earl of Memory, who has made the Rhûn roster, not as originally intended, with some changes to the soldiers and models, but instead he went in and remade everything. So every Rhûn unit is custom made for DCI Last Alliance, and we really hope you shall enjoy them as much as we do. Now, as you can see, this is the bodyguard, the generic bodyguard, the common bodyguard of new generals. They are heavy clad cavalry archers who in melee will use a spear, making them a bit less effective against infantry units, but of course give them an advantage against other cavalry. And that can be quite useful if you're considering that the Northmen of Rovanion of course have a cavalry bodyguard. So you can get some nice one-on-ones there. They have masks because in the lore, it was common that Easterlings and dwarves had interactions and bonds, so that we are giving the Easterlings this traditional war feature of the dwarves. Simply mean that they saw that dwarves are using masks and they are doing the same. Here we first see the bannerman of high quality bannerman of the Easterlings. You will find that there's a lot of differences between our bannermen, and this bloke here is of high quality, so he has the same outfit as the company he's riding with. And then we have the general himself, who do not hide his face from the enemy, but is showing himself and is riding into the fray with his sword. Of course, generals can not have missile weapons, so that's why he do not have it himself. From then we move on to, here is the Rhûn bodyguard, and as you see, these are the Rhûn lancers, who we will encounter later on again, but they are heavy shock cavalry who can ride down the enemy. And the Rhûn generals, there are two of them at start of the game, has this special general model with a special kind of helmet, and yeah, they are showing the pride of Rhûn when they are coming to the west. Then it is the air and the faction air model, and right in this setting here, he still had the Rhûn bodyguard. That is no longer the case, but as you can see, he is a version of the general model, but he has a fancier helmet and small such details, making him stand out, standing next to his peers, such speaking. Because we like an heir should have his own outfit. And lastly, we have the warlord himself, and of course the warlord term for the faction leader is again to represent the fact that this is a confederacy. Almost every lord who is fighting in this war is presumably a chieftain or king in his own homeland, but here they have gathered into the confederacy, and the confederacy has appointed a warlord to manage the affairs of the faction. But here we see a very, very fancy bodyguard. This is the standard cavalry archer bodyguard in its upgraded form. So the faction leader of Rhûn begins with an upgraded bodyguard, meaning that you will already see what you can look forward to once you upgraded your smithies for the rest of your generals. And also lastly, the faction leader of Rhûn, the warlord himself, just like the heir, that is a bit different from his peers, the common generals, in the shape and form of his helmet, if not more. I would not be surprised if there are small details here that make him stand out. He has red, for example, so Earl of Memory really likes to go into details with these kinds of things. I could also take the time to mention here. See, they have the same. There are some difference, but we have here for. I will just start battle so you can see. In this case here, both the heir and the lord has the same special ability, and what we have done is that when you hover over it, you can see the name of the ability. This is called the Vanguard, and you can see, of course, what does it do. And because I often wanted myself to see once I activated it, oh, what did it do? I made it so that when it's active and you hover over it, you still see what does it do. But we leave it with that, and
Life is made of 2 days.
move along to the army itself.